thank you everyone for taking some time out of your day to come and listen to what ourselves, Poynting and Draytek have to say. Whether you're involved in retail or hospitality, if you're relying on POS systems to process transactions and manage inventory to provide a smooth shopping experience to your customers, the impact of an internet outage can be significant. We've brought together a perfect solution to ensure these outages don't happen: Draytek routers and Poynting antennas, providing reliable, uninterrupted networking solutions no matter the use case. So we're going to start with Draytek routers, and I'm going to introduce Peter first of all. Peter has worked in channel sales for over 35 years, and in this time has worked for some of the world's most recognizable brands such as Samsung, Toshiba and Panasonic. His role has been varied, and at one point appeared as a guest presenter on QVC as a networking expert on all things wireless. Peter currently manages channel sales at Draytek, working with customers and partners across the UK to provide uninterruptible connectivity that is rock solid.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you are all well. 35 years seems like a real long time. Apologies for the light coming in through the sky like that. It happens every morning about this time. So I'm Peter Convy. I work for Draytek. I've been in channel sales for a number of years, and this morning we're talking about uninterruptible connectivity, particularly in the retail and hospitality space. But first off, I'm conscious that there'll be a few people on the call that I work with Draytek. I've been selling Draytek for many, many years. However, there may also be some on the call that I've not heard of Draytek before or know any of the history around Draytek. So quick whirlwind, quick potted history around Draytek, which was founded in Taiwan in 1996. And Draytek sells secure routing solutions, access points, switches, and remote management. It's great having all that infrastructure out there, but if you can't remotely manage it, you haven't got a good view of the networking environment. So whilst it was founded in 1996, the first region that was set up a year later in 1997, which was the UK. It's quite interesting because when you look at regional sizes of vendors across the world, you look at some of the vendors like Samsung, Panasonic, Toshiba, and you ask them the question, which is their largest worldwide region? It's generally the US, North America, purely and simply landmass size. That's outside of Japan and China. We were set up really, really early. And from a sales perspective, Draytek UK is the largest worldwide region for Draytek. What's the benefit of that? The benefit of that is that we are really connected to Taiwan headquarters. We get involved from a development perspective, from a product perspective. We can shape and design what that look and feel, that secure functionality and configuration looks like for the devices. It also means that if we do have an issue, turnaround is really, really quick. From a support perspective, pre-sales, post-sales support, if you call Draytek or you use our ticketing system, you're going to speak to somebody from Draytek. It's not an outsourced company. The individuals work for Draytek. So in the UK, we have 2 pre-sales architects that generally join us on calls to support customers in designing what that networking infrastructure should look like, using Draytek, whether it's just secure routing, whether it's access points, or the whole complete Draytek range. And then support is based out of Ireland. And again, these technicians work for Draytek in the UK. Another interesting fact is that Draytek only make products for Draytek. We haven't got a production line where we have a production line for Draytek, a production line for X vendor. We don't OEM for anybody else, which means, the product is truly 100% Draytek. We own the IP on the product. We also own the firmware. It's Draytek's code. And with that in mind, Draytek actually have their own operating system, which is called Drayos, which is pretty damn secure. So yeah, as a router vendor, as a router manufacturer, access points and switches, we win many, many awards, and the list is endless. In the UK, over 40,000 businesses use our products. And I would say from a vertical perspective, our key verticals and customers that I engage with on a regular basis would be retail and hospitality, which has grown significantly post the COVID pandemic. public sector and blue light services, so police, ambulance, military, etc. And then the final bubble we have here, it says devices managed across sites using Draytek ACS. This is our remote management software. So we have one customer based across Europe, and they have 120,000 licenses. That means 120,000 Draytek devices being centrally managed through one pane of glass. And I think that's the key. Whether you're installing routers, access point switches, they can all be managed through one pane of glass. So let's take a look at retail, hospitality, see how things have changed. The problem was really highlighted during the COVID pandemic, when retail and hospitality started to reopen again. You know, some of the networking infrastructure in retail and hospitality had been around for some time. So you had potentially old types of access points. Outdoor spaces were being used, if you remember. So because of social distancing, we all had to be 2 meters apart. Gazebos were put up outside. People were ordering from QR codes off the table. But you've got this fragmented infrastructure. You've got little or no external Wi-Fi, or again, a fragmented system. So this really highlighted performance issues. How many times did you, or were you asked to go inside to transact, or there were servers wandering around with PDQ machines in the air because they couldn't get a wireless signal? And if the WAN went down, how did IT know? Because a lot of these systems were not connected back centralized. There was no remote management software. So the first time that a retailer knew that there was a problem was when they couldn't transact. And if you think about one of our largest retail customers in the UK, which has over 7,000 sites, if they can't transact, they have to close. That is a big problem. The solution, certainly from an external coverage perspective, we upgraded the wireless infrastructure in many locations to mesh. Mesh allows you to have up to 8 access points to cover an entire retail environment or hospitality, whether that's internal or external, because we have external access points as well. And they talk to each other. So as the customer is moving around, as the employees are moving around, processing orders, transacting bills, the access points know exactly where you are, and customers and employees can roam around the whole network and eliminate those dead spots. However, coming back to uninterruptible connectivity, what happens when the WAN goes down? Because it does go down. And that's where you need a device that's going to give you a failover capability. Failover means if the WAN is disconnected, there's a backup solution. And in this webinar, and in this case, we're talking about 4G backup. So the benefits of using Draytek routing is that the Draytek routers and the Draytek routers we're talking about today, and when you think about the range, there's 29 routers in it, so we really had to focus in on what that retail hospitality solution looks like, is that they can accept multiple WANs. So you can connect a telephone line to it, VDSL, ADSL, you can connect to Ethernet, dual WAN. We've got a product for every type of connectivity. So, you know, the benefits are now that customers can transact with no dead spots. There is great communication between the front of house, back of house, the kitchen, and overall, and let's face it, the most important part, customer first. Customer experience is improved. So selecting the right router. I've already said there's 29 routers in the range. How do you select the right one? So let's look at some of the key characteristics that we'll be looking for. So failover. So if the WAN's disconnected, again, that could be telephone line, that could be fiber to the cabinet, fiber to the premises. If that's disconnected, you have a single WAN, you need it to fail over to 4G or a backup that you have. So that's the first characteristic. Connectivity options, which you'll see, we've got all the connectivity covered, but by selecting a router with embedded SIM cards in the back, and these routers that we're talking about have 2 slots in the rear of the product, which can be securely fastened in the back of the router. We do also have other routers that perform failover function, and you use a USB dongle to plug in the front. From a retail environment, you really want those SIM cards and that connectivity option to be locked away. So the routers we're talking about today have these embedded SIMs in the back of the unit. Now, we haven't talked about load balancing. It's an interesting one because failover can operate in a number of ways. So active failover or active-active. So you may have WAN connectivity, but the performance may not be great. Okay, it happens specifically in out-of-town rural locations. So you can actually use the 4G and other WANs in a load balancing active-active state. So it actually blends the performance based upon the WAN that is connected. So you've got the ability to improve your throughput by using different types of WAN, predominantly the mobile data. And then in a failover environment, it fails over immediately. You can imagine from a 4G perspective, the devices generally are inside a data cabinet or in a cupboard somewhere. And whilst the devices have aerials on them, you know, it's really only fit for internal use, for localized use. So what we need is an external mobile antenna that is going to give us optimum performance to be able to use that mobile data and continue to transact in the retail environment. And then finally, remote management. So we've got the network infrastructure in, we've got a pointing antenna outside, everything is going great. But from a centralized IT perspective, they need to know first and foremost when there's a problem. And this is exactly what Draytek management software ACS3 will do. It will actually inform IT of the problem before the retail environment is aware, which is great. They can get straight onto it and find out what the problem is. If it has fallen over to 4G, they will know. I'm just touching on the remote management software called ACS3. I'm conscious that most vendors also have their own remote management solution. We hear it spoken about, you know, one pane of glass for everything. So whether you're installing routing, access points or switches, they can all be accessed through Draytek's ACS3. The first topic here is auto provisioning, and it's a really interesting one. So I've already mentioned that one of our customers has over 7,000 sites. You can imagine the time that it takes to, well, sending 7,000 routers to a warehouse is easy. But then you've got to deploy a man in a van to go around every site, configure each router to access ACS3 when it's installed. Wouldn't it be great if before the units were delivered to the warehouse of the customer, that every single router was pre-provisioned? So it had the credentials for the customer's remote management ACS3 already inside the routers. What does that mean? Well, you still need to deliver it to the site, but all the customer has to do is unbox the router and plug it in, and it will make itself known to the Draytek ACS3 automatically. It joins itself to the network, and then it can download firmware, adjust the configuration, etc. So that's auto provisioning. And obviously we've spoken about already the monitoring of the device. Should there be a WAN issue, it fails over, what's happening? How do we attach to the device? How do we find out what's going on? You can imagine during COVID, when people couldn't go out to site, engineers couldn't go out to site. The uptake on Draytek ACS3 was absolutely immense because now partners, customers who manage their own Draytek ACS3 could access their network from anywhere. And then from a maintenance perspective, and I've really shortened the feature set of ACS3 because there are many, many benefits to it. But for today, for our webinar, I'm really focusing on the highlights: scheduling maintenance outside of office hours, upgrading firmware, downgrading firmware, changing configurations, and running reports. So just a few of the things that we can do with Draytek ACS3. From a product perspective, I've kept it really simple. I've focused in on 3 products that we're bundling with the pointing antennas out of 29 products, which all fit those characteristics that we discussed earlier. And I always like to consider the range of Draytek products. Sounds very simple. We've got a white range and we've got a black range, right? The white range can connect to, as you can see here, I'm trying not to talk about product model numbers, ADSL, ADSL2, VDSL. Both the white products, the 2865 and 66, can also connect to Ethernet. So you've got 2 WANs there, whereas the black range is Ethernet only. This is actually a dual WAN product. Outside of this, from a connectivity perspective, they all share the same characteristics. I've not touched on VPNs. I will do very, very briefly. You can imagine Draytek, rock solid, resilient routing, uninterruptible connectivity. We also have VPN capability. And when you consider that on the 28, 65 and 66, you've got 32 VPNs, and on the 29, 27, you've got 50. It's more than enough for any branch, core data center, secure routing deployment. So that's the connectivity, up to 6 WAN connections with each device. On average, people use 2, WAN 1, WAN 2, 4G as backup, or just WAN 1, and a 4G backup. All of the units have a dual embedded SIM, and it's as simple as that. Out of the 29 routers, we've got the 2865 LAC, 2866, 2927. What does the LAC mean? L stands for LTE modem. That's the 4G modem that's in the back of the devices. And the AC is that it's AC wireless. So if you're using it in a mesh environment where you've got another 7 AC access points, they will connect back to the router and they will perform that mesh function to eliminate those dead spots. And then finally, I thought it'd be interesting to show you the back of the router just to see where things connect. So the 2 outside connectors are for those 2 AC aerials you can see on the devices, and the 2 inner connectors are for your pointing antenna. So without further ado, I thank you for your time, and I will hand over to Hugo.
Thank you very much, Peter. Really well put. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. Really clear overview on the Draytek routers. I'm sure we'll have some questions following up, but now is on to Hugo. So Hugo is part of the pointing antennas team in Europe. He is a telecommunications engineer by trade and started his career as a product manager, managing and deploying wireless projects. Hugo joined Poynting following his strong belief that connectivity is the building block of the booming technological world we live in, regardless of the use case. Poynting cares about making connectivity reliable, and he truly shares that vision. Over to you, Hugo.
Thank you, Jay. Good morning, everyone. Once again, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Peter. I loved your presentation. I hope I can keep the standard. For those who are not yet familiar with pointing antennas, a quick word about who we are. We are a South African antenna manufacturer. We were born in 2001, and we have specialized in creating, developing, and manufacturing wideband 4G, 5G, and Wi-Fi antennas. In the beginning, military and defense, as well as commercial antennas, were all manufactured and sold under the same umbrella, pointing antennas. In the meantime, 2014, 2015, we have part ways, and now we are 2 different entities and companies, but having our roots in that military and defense kind of environment and those high standards really shaped the way we do things and who we are by the end of the day. Our only focus, as Jay was saying, is to make stable, reliable, and consistent wireless connectivity happen. And at our core, we are a big bunch of engineers. Most of the team are engineers. The owners and founders are engineers. Even the sales guy is an engineer. We hold over 70 patents on antenna designs and antenna design techniques, and we do this for 5 different markets. Today, we will be focusing mainly on fixed wireless access. That's what we call whenever we attach one of our antennas to a Draytek router to ensure connectivity to a fixed location. And this is actually our strongest market. In the UK alone, we've sold 80,000 antennas in the past 3-4 years alone, and these are being used as a main way to access the internet for homes and businesses, or as a backup way for connecting people to the internet, or people or devices to the internet all across the UK. If you haven't heard the name Poynting, there's a name that probably you have heard before, which is Expol One, and we are their proud, the Expol One proud creator and manufacturer. This is one of the most successful antennas for fixed wireless access applications in the UK, and we're very proud to say that it's a Poynting antenna. So how can an antenna help your business stay connected. The only way to ensure a stable, reliable, and consistent cellular connectivity is that we ensure grip to the signal. Without signal, not even the best, most advanced, and most reliable router like the ones Peter was presenting will work. And Peter already put it very clearly. Sometimes the router goes in the cabinet, but the 4G signal has a hard time getting to that cabinet, right? So to ensure the grip, you need a good quality antenna. Let's use a car for us to try and understand a bit better this concept of grip to the signal. Whatever the car, whatever amount of money you pay for it, if you use low quality tires, you'll have no grip. And with no grip, you'll have no safety nor comfort. A car journey and the 4G connection can be compared. Think about the car as being your router. Think about the passengers as being the data transferred, and think about the tires as being the antenna. If the right antenna is chosen, it will provide a strong signal grip, and you ensure that data or the passengers are transferred effectively from point A to point B. On the other end, if the wrong antenna is chosen, not even the most advanced, the most reliable Draytek router will work for you, because there's just simply no grip. There's no way it can do its job. So you need to choose a high quality antenna to ensure effective and reliable communication. And why do you need that external antenna, right? So you need a good quality antenna to ensure grip, but why do you need to bring it outside? You do because the signal inside the building is 15 to 20 dB lower than what it is outside of it. When you're driving around in the UK, especially in more rural settings, and you see someone standing by the window talking on their phone, what do you think they're doing? Do you think they're taking in the view and enjoying the beautiful rural UK sites? I don't think so. They have seen those views a number of times. What they're trying to do is to be as close as possible with their antenna, which is on their mobile phone for this example. They want to be as close as possible to being outside without actually not having to withstand the beautiful British weather. So in case you're wondering what this 20 dB can do for you, they're capable of taking you from a poor signal level to a good one, or from an average coverage area to an excellent one. So sometimes people think, okay, I will use the antenna when my connection is really, really poor. I think we should be more critical about it, right? So it will always bring a positive effect to the connection. So by now, if you trust Netxl and if you trust what I'm saying, you probably get it, and you understand, okay, I need an antenna, I need an external antenna. With my next 4G deployment, I'll make sure to buy something and put it there. But anything will do, right? It's how hard can it be to get antennas right? It's just a plastic box, piece of wire, or any conductive element inside. How hard can it be? Unfortunately, antennas are not, definitely they're not rocket science, but they're not a piece of plastic and a piece of wire inside of it as well. Even on the first sight, they seem like a straightforward solution or product. They have a number of key characteristics that are absolutely fundamental to ensure that you stay connected as far as possible, and as with the connection, with that connection is as stable as possible. Today, I won't have the time to go thoroughly through all of these aspects, but I just wanted to bring this to your attention, so you are aware that there's kind of some engineering and science behind an antenna. I'll just briefly mention some of these aspects. The first is frequency range, right? So a good antenna is one that covers all the frequencies that your application requires. So if we're talking 4G like we're talking today, this means from 617 more or less megahertz all the way to 2700. So if we were to talk about 5G, then we're talking 617 all the way to 3800 megahertz. A good antenna is also one that has a stable gain across all of these frequencies. We're so used to look at an antenna and see, okay, the gain is a given figure, right? See it as a 6 dBi antenna or a 10 dBi antenna. But bear in mind that that little number just tells you the gain of that antenna for a given frequency out of all of these range that I mentioned at a given direction. So we need to dig a bit deeper, and we need to understand that we need that antenna to have a gain which is as stable as possible across all the frequencies. And it needs to point towards where we need it. And this brings me to radiation patterns. Radiation patterns are the most important thing of an antenna. It's not gain, it's not frequency. Frequencies are, of course, very important. Everything is relevant, but radiation pattern. If you're getting an omnidirectional antenna, you need it to perform 360 degrees always with the same performance. And that's a good radiation pattern on the antenna. That's what it's going to bring you. If you're getting a directional antenna, you need to ensure that it points directly. The biggest performance or the biggest gain and where it is more controlled is from the center of that antenna. So you know when the installer, be it you or your installer or your customer's installers, will have easy time getting it done. Directionality, of course, comes from radiation patterns. And then we have willingness to accept power. Willingness to accept power, you typically read it on the datasheet as being VSWR. Just let's run with look for antennas that have a VSWR across all the frequencies below 2.5 to 1. Then the last aspects we have here are polarization and diversity, and then build materials. Build materials, it's just common sense, right? If the antenna is going to be the one thing standing outside, you need to ensure it can withstand the weather that it's going to face. Now, polarization and diversity, as you could see on Peter's slide, each router has two little antenna ports, and this will allow the router to use MIMO. And MIMO is better achieved when you're using diversity techniques, and polarization diversity is one of those techniques. Today, I don't have the time, but I just need to make it a focus that a good MIMO setup with diversity, spatial diversity or polarization diversity is what's going to ensure that your router 2x's or 4x's the throughput and the performance that you would get by just using a single antenna. So sometimes we get the question, can I just use one of the antenna ports on the router? Yeah, you can do that, but you're not taking full advantage. You're not protecting your overall investment. So as you can see, there's much more to an antenna than just that little piece of wire. This is you can go as complex as you want with this, and if you want to, we invite you to go to our YouTube page, and there's plenty of content where we teach all about antennas. But if you don't want to bother with it, just pick up the phone, ring the good team at Netxl or ourselves, and we will be happy to support you with explaining it or just navigate you through the decision of buying an antenna. All in all, it doesn't really matter if you're trying, and today we're talking a bit about retail and ensuring that business stays operational and that the companies can sell their products or their services. And it really doesn't matter if you're trying to sell bread and pastries in one of your 700 bakeries in France, and an Expol one, a very simple Expol one, is all you need, like it was the case with this chain, 700 plus location chain of boulangeries in France called Marie Blachère, or if your business is selling pet and animal related items, and you're in Germany and in the Benelux with over 1,500 locations, and perhaps like Fresnapf, and perhaps you're a bit further from the masts and you need an Expol 2 to ensure you stay connected, or even if you're selling sports goods and you need an LPDA 92. What matters is that your business, your customers' businesses, they stay connected, because if they don't, their customers or if you're a business, your customers, they may decide to go elsewhere. Technically, a good and quality antenna, one that aces all those and balances out all those aspects that I mentioned before, means higher throughput, lower latencies, lower jitters, and no connection drops. This is technically right, but for the business itself, in real life, what Poynting is synonym with is businesses having fast access to their data when they need it, and that their operations run smoothly and they have a lower total cost of ownership on their connectivity setups. For your company, if you are a reseller or a distributor, Poynting means more time getting and deploying new projects and less time on the phone dealing with RMAs, quality claims, troubleshooting connectivity scenarios, or even running back and forth to the installation site. And as Peter was saying, sometimes these may be 7,000 devices, or these 7,000 devices may translate into 7,000 locations. So if you have a problem with those, imagine just your costs of getting it right. So sometimes just easy to invest a bit more upfront and rest assured that that the setup will work. And this is true regardless of the application or the business needs, as I was saying. Whether you're selling coffees, breads, clothes, anything else, it is a good quality antenna that's going to ensure stable, reliable, and consistent connection. It will be the antenna that will ensure the grip to the signal. And because this is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, as we just saw, right, 3 different businesses, 3 different multi-location businesses, all using different antennas, XPOL 1s, XPOL 2s, LPDA 92s. You need to consider your specific business needs and where these are found. What are the locations? For example, if the application is in a suburban area, you probably need to take into account things like how far am I from the base station? Do I need a higher gain antenna? Do I have line of sight? Meaning, do I need a directional antenna like an LPDA 500 or an XPOL 24? Or am I blocked by trees or by buildings, and probably I need an omnidirectional antenna like an Omni 600 or Omni 214? You need to consider as well, if you're in suburban or more rural settings, that the cells, the frequencies being used by the operator are the lower and the mid ones. So you actually need antennas that have a better performance on those frequencies. Or perhaps you have other constraints that are imposed by physical locations. Where are you're going to install your connectivity? And you may need an antenna that needs to be very rugged, slim, have a vandal-proof design, or be super easy to install because it comes out with so many different mounting options, like the puck antenna. Or, for example, if the coaxial cable run is a problem, you may think, okay, I need to install my router directly inside of the antenna, and then we have the E-Point series to mitigate those challenges. Or still on the machine-to-machine applications, you may need even a slimmer design, like a Dash 1 or an ultra rugged all-weather impact rated Omni 2997. Or even still, and when I was creating this, I was remember our last event with Netxl. Your business is a food truck, right? And you need to ensure it stays connected, but you don't have so much space, and you need to account for ruggedness and all-weather characteristics, and how many antennas can you place on top of your vehicle, be it a food truck, medical van, or any sorts of vehicle. You need to account for those requirements as well. Different businesses, different requirements, different solutions. We came up with this little tool, and I invite you to search for it, make use of it. You log into choose 5G antennas or choose4gantennas.com with very simple questions, non-technical. As you can see, we will navigate you through how to choose the right antenna for your setup. Questions like what's your setting, more rural, more urban, what's your application, how many connectors on your router. So by all means, feel free and make use of that tool. Poynting exists so you can focus on your business, and we will focus on making sure it does stay connected. And with this beautiful picture, that's me for today. I hope we helped you. I think Peter's presentation was great in giving you an overview of everything you need to ensure your business stays connected. So I hope we help you understand a bit better how 4G, and when done right with the right tools, SIM cards, routers, management platforms, antennas, we can ensure you that your business stays connected under all circumstances. And that's it. Thank you. I don't know if we have any questions. Jay, you have your camera off. Peter, you also have your camera off, and probably now you can switch it on.
Perfect. Yeah, do send in any questions if you have any. I've got a few here already. We'll start with Peter. What is the downtime if one of the WAN connections goes down and we need to work solely based on the other? Will that impact my systems?
No, shouldn't do at all. There's a there's a couple of different modes from a failover perspective that you can configure. If you're using the SIM cards in active failover mode, which I mentioned earlier, the failover is instant, sub-second. If you're using just purely in failover mode, it's 10 seconds. So a customer can decide which is applicable for their environment, but no downtime.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then one for Hugo. Is there anything I should consider when using extra cables and splitters with MIMO devices?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, the cable loss. Every single coaxial cable adds loss to the system, and the reason why we're using the external antenna is to mitigate those losses, right? So we aim, typically we advise on don't lose more than 3 dB on your coaxial cable, and the way you calculate is every type of cable has a different loss curve. So basically, it loses more dBs the thinner the cable is typically, and the higher the frequencies which are being used. So what we do is we aim at 1800 megahertz. We look at the performance of that cable at 1800 megahertz, and we see how many meters can I go until I lose 3 dB, and we aim for that. Sometimes we can live with 5 dB. Much past 5 dB, I encourage people to look on how can they bring the Draytek router closer to the antenna, so they don't need such a long coaxial cable. But yeah, we need to be mindful of splitters. If it's a 1 to 2, it's 3 dB of loss as well. So we need to be mindful of splitters and coaxial cables because they will introduce loss, and we need to ensure that we keep that to a minimum.
Perfect. Thank you, Hugo. And actually, a follow-up one for Peter from the last one. What happens when the WAN comes back? Is there anything the customer needs to do?
No, it's automatic. As soon as the WAN is re-established, again, dependent upon the mode of the 4G dead SIM, whether it's active or failover, it will be re-established automatically.
Perfect. Thank you. And then one more, well, another one for Hugo. How do I orientate a directional LTE antenna during installation? Oh,
okay. Yeah, so basically, if I had to kind of set up a step-by-step way of doing it, is get your router, get a power cord extension, bring your router and your antenna outside, experiment with a router around your house or your office building, if you can do that. If you, for example, you know exactly, there's a website called soulmapper.net or .co.uk or .com. It's Cellmapper. That a lot of the times as those antennas really well, those towers from the operators really well pinpointed on the map, so you can probably see. But you can select from different operators, so you know who's your SIM card provider. You can select based on that where's the closest mast, and then you can try that. If you are absolutely clueless of where it is, then I think that's the way to go. You bring the antenna out, you bring the router out without even mounting it into the building. You test different locations, give it 2 or 3 minutes, see the signal levels varying on the monitoring system within the Draytek router. If the signal is improving by quite by quite a lot, then that's your location. Just put the antenna there and then bring the coaxial cables in and install the Draytek inside. That would be the short answer to that question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Hugo. And I've just put the cell mapper link in the webinar chat if any of you want to save it. It's something that all of our sales and support team use as well to help customers who might not be able to access it themselves. So really useful tool. Thank you. Peter, if the router goes into failover, what is the throughput of 4G in the scenario?
It should be up to 300 meg based upon the class of modem that we have in the back of the LAC routers. However, it depends what external antenna you're using. So I would expect this to be pretty damn good using Poynting.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. And then last one for Hugo. Any that are in there that we've missed out, we'll make sure that we reach out to you guys directly with your answers. Hugo, do higher gain antennas ensure a better connection or longer reach?
So if it is a good antenna on every other aspect, right? So if we're ensuring it has good radiation pattern, good VSWR, coaxial cables are of good quality, and we isolate just gain, right? Everything is accounted for. Then the answer is yes. A higher gain ensures you hopefully higher throughputs and definitely higher ranges. Now the thing is, if you're absolutely clueless and you're just looking at antenna specifications, or you're looking at antenna names, and sometimes it says omnidirectional antenna 9 dBi, omnidirectional antenna 6 dBi, omnidirectional antenna 3 dBi, you would be surprised. But for a lot of the times, then the higher number that appears there, it's not revealing the best antenna and the one that's going to give you a better reach. And the reason for this is when everyone, even us, right? When you say this is XPOL 1, 3 dBi or 4 dBi of gain, that number is typically on the higher frequencies and for a single frequency. It's not a flat gain. It's not 4 dBi for the entire set of frequencies. So the answer is not as easy, as straightforward as it probably could sound like it would be. You need to dig deeper. You need to understand what your environment is. If it's a rural setting, you need to look at lower frequencies, and 100% of the time, that higher number that you see in front of the name of the antenna is not the gain of the antenna for the lower frequencies. It's for the higher frequencies. So yeah, higher gains ensure you longer reaches, as long as it's a higher gain on a good radiation pattern on the frequency that you are looking for.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Hugo. And there was one more in the Q&A box, which I can see that Peter's come back to, but just for everyone else, somebody asked, when can we see Draytek's 5G routers? And Peter came back and said that this should be by the end of 2023, hopefully, which is great because the Poynting antennas are already 5G compatible, so we should have some killer solutions in the portfolio. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Hugo. Really great brands to work with, definitely two of our favorites. They definitely provide themselves on reliable, innovative, market-leading solutions, and that's the reason why we wanted to bring these bundles together for you. We have some of the kind of key focus ones available on the website at the moment, and we will follow up over the next few days with some exclusive discounts for everyone who's joined the webinar. So keep an eye out in your inbox for them. But just because there are certain ones on the website doesn't mean that we can't create more, put things together, especially for your use case. So if there are any routers or antennas in particular that you're looking at, please do let us know and we can create those bundles specifically for you too.
All right.
That's great. Thank you everyone for joining. We will send out a recording of the webinar over the next few days, and we will also have a summary of everything that kind of everybody spoke about on our blog post section of our website over the next few days too. But yeah, any questions, reach out to any of us, and thank you all for joining. See you all soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.